Hello there YouTube and welcome to my latest build, the Edgelord. This started out as just a fun and quirky warrior build that I was playing casually, but I quickly realised just how powerful it was, so I decided to crank the difficulty up to legendary. Even with that, I was still dominating every fight, so needless to say, this guy is not to be messed with. If you're looking to skip ahead to any specific sections, then there will be timestamps in the description. Before I jump into the backstory though, don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel, as I have almost 50 different Skyrim builds already uploaded, so there's plenty more videos like this one. The Edgelord grew up in Hammerfell, and was born towards the end of the war against the Aldmeri Dominion. Both of his parents had fought against the elves, and made sure to teach him the ways of war. As soon as he was walking, it seemed there was a sword in his hand. This meant by the time he reached his teenage years, he was a skilled fighter, able to rapidly dart between targets and strike out with strength and precision. All this training with no actual conflict meant that he became exceptionally good at toying with his foes, being able to use his shield to keep his sparring partners from ever being able to strike out at him. This lack of a real fight or challenge also led to him growing bored. His father would say to him every day that the rebellion was going to strike out against the Altmer very soon, but hearing that for his whole life made the words seem empty. If he ever wanted to see a real fight, he was going to have to search for it himself. With his mind made up, he left, sneaking away one night to look for adventure somewhere else. His journey was a long one, and by the time he had reached Cyrodiil, he was running short on both gold and food. Despite all the years of training to survive in a battle, he couldn't remember ever really being taught how to hunt. He also had a certain level of pride that meant he wasn't going to steal to survive. It looked like his only option was to make some money fast. Off in the distance was a small village. Hopefully, someone in there was in need of a swordsman. When he arrived, he found he was in luck. There were already several people out looking for mercenaries to bloody their blades. Apparently the local wildlife had been causing plenty of problems as of late. The other mercenaries were all wearing rusty old armour, and looked like they had no idea which end of their weapons they were even supposed to point at the enemy. He joyfully offered to complete all the various contracts, and over the next week made good on his word, slaying wolves, bears, goblins and bandits alike. The people of the village were more than pleased, not only paying him, but giving him all the wine he could possibly drink. This may not have been the brightest move, as the young warrior quickly became intoxicated, and began boasting about being the greatest warrior of all time, giving himself the title of the Edgelord, and rapidly wearing out his welcome. The villagers' gratitude ended up only lasting a few days, and soon they were charging the Redguard exorbitant prices, simply to rest for the night. With his coin purse dwindling, he took to the road once more, looking for a new place to sell his sword on. This continued for several years, until he came to the border of Skyrim. He had recently completed a string of contracts, and was at an inn, celebrating his victories with as much wine and ale as he could get his hands on. Sadly, he still didn't have the highest tolerance for alcohol, and found himself in a brawl with a trio of Imperials, getting knocked out and waking up the following day on the back of a cart. His hands were bound, and there were 3 other men in the same situation as him. Looking at the man leading the cart, he saw the uniform of an Imperial soldier, and pieced together what had taken place the previous night. Taking a moment to curse himself for fighting soldiers, he started trying to work out how he could escape from this situation. On the bright side, there was no way the day could get any worse. The main skills of this build are enchanting and light armour. Enchanting is what truly makes this character so strong. I went with all the perks in Enchanter, as well as Insightful Enchanter, Corpus Enchanter and Extra Effect. This means that you can not only make yourself some awesome enchanted weapons and armour, but you can also make a smithing suit and an alchemy suit if you so wish, in order to improve your equipment even further. In the light armour tree, we have some real heavy investment. I was only missing the final rank of Agile Defender and the Death Movement perk. With such heavy investment, we will not only get a hugely improved armour rating, but also have a small boost to our speed and stamina regen. The additional skills of a build are one-handed, smithing and alchemy. One-handed is how we're going to be dealing all of our damage, so we want as many ranks of armsman as possible. Additionally, I would recommend taking the fighting stance perk to reduce the cost of power attacks. In the smithing tree, you'll want to go up the left hand side to get the advanced armors perk. This and steel smithing will allow you to vastly improve all of your gear, ensuring you get as close as possible to the armor cap. Finally, we come to alchemy. This is just an all-round great skill, and long-time subscribers will know my obsession with this. You can make fortified smithing and enchanting potions so that your gear is stronger. You can also make healing potions if you want to avoid having to use restoration. Possibly most importantly though, you can make some great combat potions, be it beneficial ones to fortify one-handed, or even some nasty poisons to deal extra damage or slow down enemies. When leveling with this build, you will want to go around 50-50 with health and stamina. Ideally, stamina should be your main focus though, so you can always switch it up to 60-40 if you feel confident you're not going to get hit too often. The standing stone for this build is the Atronach stone. Magicka doesn't matter that much with this build, but absorbing it is good for defense. When facing dragons or mages, you'll be grateful for the extra defense this stone provides. In terms of powers, I would advise using Adrenaline Rush frequently, especially early on. This certainly isn't the best of the racial powers included in the game, but on a stamina based warrior it certainly holds at least some value for ensuring you can get plenty of attacks in without resorting to vegetable soup. The main power I used though was Whirlwind Sprint. Once the build is done, you'll already be pretty fast, but throwing this shouting grants even more mobility to the character, letting you close the distance on archers and get up close and personal before they can even knock an arrow. The main weapon of this build will be an improved scimitar enchanted with Absorb Stamina and Frost damage. The Absorb Stamina enchantment will ensure you can constantly use shield bashes and power attacks, but when tied with Frost damage, you'll also find your enemy's stamina reserves rapidly being drained, preventing them from getting a strong attack of their own in, or being able to sprint after you, if you decide to disengage. The armour for this build is a full suit of scaled armour, and a hide shield. Additionally, you will want a ring and necklace for extra enchantment slots. You'll want at least a couple of items enchanted with both Fortify Stamina and Fortify Stamina Regen, but I'd also advise throwing in a few Fortify one-handed enchantments, in order to drastically raise your damage output. On any empty slots which don't allow for these enchantments, instead go for resistance based ones, specifically Frost, to help prevent yourself from being slowed or slain. As for factions with this build, you can side with literally anyone who is willing to pay you. That's all the justification you need. As long as there's a clear monetary incentive, you can go for it. To keep with the travelling blade for hire feel of things, I recommend you take up any bounties you come across, and always ask around in inns for jobs. Don't forget that Jarls and Stewards also tend to have contracts available when you first speak to them. Potentially you could join the Dark Brotherhood, although don't go all out on the Sithis worship. Sure, you're technically a killer, but you do it for the money, not to serve some greater being. Likewise, the Companions too are a possibility, but once again, don't be fanatical about it. It's worth grabbing a follower to watch your back and act as a meat shield. The Edgelord isn't all that eager to part with his coin though, so don't travel with a mercenary. Instead, make sure you end up with a companion who doesn't expect you to give them anything in return. I personally ended up with Lydia, and I kitted her out with some nice steel plate armour and a soul trapping sword, so that she could fill up empty soul gems for me. This build is a stamina focused warrior. With such a huge stamina pool to draw from, you can shield bash or power attack near endlessly without the help of vegetable soup. Being lightly armoured also means you're pretty fast, so you can dodge a fair few attacks and sprint around the battlefield whenever you need to. When fighting against a single enemy, you can stagger lock them with a combination of shield bashes and power attacks, practically guaranteeing you the win. When facing down multiple foes, you can struggle a little more, so try to separate them as much as possible to ensure you don't get overwhelmed. Ranged enemies such as mages and archers can also be a slight concern, but as I mentioned earlier, you can use Whirlwind Sprint in order to close the distance on them. In terms of roleplaying, you should always be looking for your next paycheck. Keep your ears open and listen out for anyone who might be willing to pay gold for your services. If you enjoyed this build, then don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions about the build, then feel free to ask in the comments below. If you want a sneak preview at future videos, you should consider following my social media accounts, as I often will give an early look at what's to come. Links to my Twitter, Facebook page and Snapchat username will all be in the description for anyone who is interested.